You're very welcome to another episode of the Scaling Your Business podcast. For this episode, I'm joined by Martin Sandhu, founder of Nuom. Martin, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Delighted to have you. Typical fashion here in the show is we go back to chapter 1 and work our way from there. So you've told me that you're based in Nottingham, but you've been based there your entire life. You were born there. What was growing up in Nottingham like? Any favorite memories or standout memories from your childhood?
Growing up in Nottingham was good. It was multicultural, though where I grew up was predominantly a white area. But in terms of, I had really good memories, hot summers, playing outside with my friends. Those summers felt like years. Really, really good memories, having a laugh. Education-wise, it was good. I didn't plan on, when I was younger, I planned on, you had dreams, you want to go around the world and see things. But it just happened to be that as I moved from my education, I found out I was a bit of a homeboy, so I didn't move far really. It was great. Like I said, my parents came over. My dad came over in the 80s and worked in the factory. His story is interesting because he's a banker, he's amazing at mathematics, but when he came over, the degree wasn't worth anything. He had a degree in mathematics, so he ended up working in the factory, which he's still there now today, grafting 12-hour shifts, 4 on, 4 off. And my mum was born here. She was born in Birmingham, and she got married when she was 18. She had me when she was 19, so she didn't really have much of a teenage life, I guess. They just got moved over to Nottingham, and hard working. But growing up was good. We didn't have much money for the luxuries. I think that's one of the things that I've spoken about before on social is, my journey of, because we didn't have the luxuries, I had to, if I wanted something, I've always found a way of getting it. And I grew up in an area of the 80s and 90s where you had the Argos catalogue. You look at that, you plan what you want for Christmas, right? You look at it, you mark it down. Or you play the game where you put a page with your friend and you go, right, you can only pick one thing off there, what it would be. And I used to mark stuff in those Argos catalogues, and I used to be like, I'm going to have that. Knowing that my mum and dad didn't have the money to do it, but I would figure out a way of making money, or a buck, basically, as I used to call it. And I have, no one's asked me that question in a long time. It's really strange. No one asks you about your childhood, but it was really good. Like I said, it didn't have much, but it was good. It was good.
You said that your dad, whatever degree he came over, he couldn't put that to use, and he works in a factory in Birmingham. Your mom grew up in Birmingham. Is that where your parents met, working in that factory?
No, so my dad's family was in Nottingham. So my dad came over to Nottingham, which is why we came over. My mum was born in Birmingham because my grandparents came over in the 50s with a lot of Asian population to work in the factories. But my mum and dad had a arranged marriage, so they'd only met a handful of times. And my mum was very young, 18. When she was, obviously she agreed to marry my dad. My dad's about 8 years older than my mum. It's a bit of an age gap. So, thinking about that now in the world that we live in, it's just bizarre. It still happens, but they're still married now,
Well, it worked out.
Exactly. So, they're still married now. They're happy. My dad's pretty much close to retirement. He still wants to work because he can't. He just want to sit around at home, basically, and my mum doesn't want him at home. They like I said, they had an arranged marriage, and then my mum had me when she was 19, 19 having a child. I've got kids now.
That's young.
I'm 39, and I just, it's tough now. Can't imagine what it was like at 19. Trying to make a life as well. At that age, you're still a kid. You are still a kid.
It looks like she was successful with raising you. So talk to me about who do you think had the biggest impact on you growing up?
I would say my dad. We had a typical Asian man relationship. Basically, you never tell your dad that you look up to him, you love him, or anything like that. You kind of like, I like you, right? but yeah, my dad, I didn't really appreciate my dad and the effort and the graft that he put in until I actually went and worked in the bakery. So I was a bit of an idiot when I got to my teenage years. I got to about 17, 18, and I was in college. I just was not interested in any education. And I failed my A levels. I failed computing, which is funny because I run a tech company now, and I started programming. But I failed computing, failed mathematics, and they were going to boot me out of college. And they basically forced me to pick something out of a UCAS book. And my dad just asked me the question. He goes, "Look, do you want to do this, or do you want to come and work where I work?" And I was like, "Okay, well, let's go and see what it's like for where you work." And I did my first 12-hour shift there, and I cried because it was mind-numbing. You worked in a bakery, so you just packed bread, and all you had time to do was think about all your failings. Nothing else but 12-hour shifts. And the people that were there were ex-miners, so the banter was good, and they were easy on me because I was, I'm Sonny was my dad's name, and I'm Sonny's boy. But it was hard work, sweaty, hot, uncomfortable, mind-numbing. I actually ended up doing a few summers there, but that first week I went back to college and chose a course. I says, I don't want to do that. I want to go and do something else. But that point is the thing I thank my father for the most, because if he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have done anything. It was a kick up the backside I needed.
You touched on computing, and I do want to ask a specific question around that, but in our pre-chat, you said that growing up in the 80s and 90s, you were fascinated by technology, that you built an entire business around it. Who was it that you looked up to when it came to technology that kind of sparked that interest? Or what was the moment that, I don't know, where you first got your hands on a computer and you were like, wow, I love this stuff?
Yeah, so those Argos catalogs were full of CD players, mini disc players. You remember the mini disc players? They were cool. I had every single one. I just loved buying tech, so I would get my hands on anything. So I could, mini disc players. I would. I was really into music as well when I was younger. I just loved the idea of those technologies there, and then computers. I'm not a typical geek or somebody who got a Commodore 64 and started programming. I didn't start programming until I was 18, 19. I was more fascinated about technology in general. So, as mobile phones came out, pagers, just generally how they were making life easier in a way. And I still am fascinated by technology now, in terms of I have 5 coffee machines at home. I don't need 5 coffee machines, but I love gadgets and technology.
That's a lot of coffee machines.
But computers in general, typical. I grew up in the area of the Super Nintendo, and Mega Drive and Master Systems, and every time a games console came out, I really started looking into how they worked, as I guess. Just before I went to college, and getting an understanding of those. And the first time I really touched programming was when I did some really low level stuff on the BBC computers and stuff like that. So it was, I have been fascinated just by technology in general. But in terms of actual programming, like I said, it wasn't until I guess I was just at college that I really started looking into that in more detail.
And shout out to Argos as well and their catalogs.
I love Argos, yeah.
Come here to me. There's 2 brothers in Ireland who founded a company. It's massive now. It's called Stripe. You're probably familiar with it.
Oh, I love Stripe. Yeah.
They studied computing. They actually left Ireland studying computing. They founded a business, sold it for a couple of million, went to America. But one thing they're doing now in Ireland is they've partnered with a couple of universities, most notably University of Limerick, to run computing courses the way they like it to be run. So they're 12 100%. Weeks. I feel like you have been through computing, and I know that you did multimedia computing in uni. If there was anything you could change about the way computing is taught in university, what would that be?
Okay, so the reason I failed at college, because I think it's important for that, is that they were teaching us languages that were, at that time, I mean, we're talking the early noughties, so HTML would have been really popular then. They were teaching us Turbo Pascal, which I think was something that was done in the 80s, right? It was boring. The guy was typical, you thought, gray suit, not cool. It wasn't that at that time, it was the Silicon Valley feel. It was just old school and it was boring. And the course was just not interesting. When I went to university, I thought that would be more different. It wasn't. And recently, my brother, who's a lot younger than me, he's 16 years younger than me, has just finished computer science a year ago. And when I went to the open day, a lot of the modules still were the same. In terms, obviously, the I guess the languages are slightly different because they've sort of brought it more up to date, but it's still that open source stuff. They don't teach you anything to do with Apple in these courses. They don't. What I found was they didn't teach you. They taught you the theory, and you did a little bit of practice. It's completely different when you go into the field of work. And I have this now with people that I employ in terms of graduates. The onboarding to get them up to speed is 6 months, because they have the theory and they can be the smartest people in the world. But if they've not actually been doing programming as a hobby, for example, they've just come straight out of uni, the onboarding time for them is so long. And I feel, at the moment, obviously it's tough, right? In terms of the job market, there's loads of opportunity, but what it is the people that are in the middle layer that are moving around, basically, and the graduates, they're struggling to get opportunities. And for me, I don't know if I'm going to employ a graduate at this moment in time, because I haven't got the time. I haven't got the 6 months to onboard them at the moment. I need somebody to hit the ground running or to be onboarded in a month. So I think I really like that, what they're doing. I think that's a great idea. I haven't heard of that, and I'll definitely look into it. But I definitely think this needs to be some sort of change, or industry needs to get more involved with the universities over here as well.
Well, hopefully when other universities see the first cohort of these students go through what Stripe have put together, maybe others will kind of come to their senses.
Because you don't really need to go to university, right, to be a programmer. You don't. And that's the funny thing now, is because my brother's finished and he's got, he's got a degree, but he hasn't got a job opportunity now, because there isn't any opportunities for him as a graduate. Whereas he could have saved that 15, 20, don't even know how much it is now. I don't dare not think. Done a Udemy course, in his own time, and probably be making some money as a freelancer now, basically doing some work, or he's got a better CV to get him onto that into a more of a job opportunity. So universities are going to struggle. I really do.
Well, Stripe have come out and said that anyone who goes through this thing that they've put together will automatically get a job at Stripe. And if not at Stripe, they've partnered with other companies like LinkedIn that said, if there's an overflow, we'll take on these students as well, because we know what they're being taught is good shit. So before we get into all interesting sides of business, here's a couple of things I know about you. You're a father. You've been to places like Boston and Paris. You own a dog. You're a Liverpool fan. You've actually been to Germany to see Klitschko versus Fury. But what's one thing you're into or curious about that not a lot of people know about you?
I love music. I love electronic music. I wish I was a DJ. I joke because I used to have loads of vinyl. I started playing out. My mates take the mick out of me because I had one gig, but I always say to them, at least I lived my dream. You never did, basically. I played out. Yeah. I had to sell on my vinyls because I was skint in my final year. So that's the one regret I definitely do have. I had a great collection, but I love electronic music. I love sport. I absolutely love sport. But I think most people that know me that I love music. I love electronic music. I guess those that don't wouldn't know that. So that's one thing to know.
Nice. I noticed on your LinkedIn page you spent a period of time as a web developer after university. What had you leave the corporate world to start a business?
So I worked in Sheffield for an agency called Rocket, graduate developer. Basically, I got thrown in the deep end because there was no one else there. I worked there for a year. I then realized that like I said before, I always, if I need some money, I can always find a way. So I ended up doing some side hustles, doing some work for other people. This led on to do some work for a startup. They offered me a ridiculous amount of money, and looking back at it now, you kind of do a risk assessment on it. You think, well, it doesn't seem right. So anyway, I jumped at the chance. Left this stable job in Sheffield, went and worked from home for this startup, got made redundant 2 months later. I just took on a mortgage,
Wow.
So yeah, so I moved out of home, took on a mortgage. I thought I was set. I was like, yeah, this is it. What was I then? 24. I was like, this is easy. I was thinking, this is easy. This just see a trajectory. And then yeah, I just grafted. You know, I just went. I think that's when I'm at my best, and I noticed that during the pandemic is that when I feel that when shit hits the fan, I feel like okay, this is me now. I'm ready. I'm a troubleshooter, and I feel that's like I said when the pressure's on, I work best. Which is weird because most people now are the opposite. They kind of don't want too much pressure because you know it's your sort of your mental health and stuff like that, and you want to look after yourself, which is right, 100%. I'm all into that. But I think as humans, we do need a bit of pressure, especially to get us
Absolutely.
up to a bit of a level. So yeah, and then it was really organic. 1 year in, I had a couple of clients. I was making more money than I was making previously at both agencies. But I didn't really, like I said, I did programming, but I didn't really enjoy it. What I enjoyed was making stuff or seeing stuff made and working with people. And then what I realized was that there were other people that were better at making it than I was. And I just started partnering with them. And then I gradually started just building teams. And that's when I started to step back and see that there was an opportunity. There's a business here. This isn't a freelancing gig anymore. This is actually a business. I have contractors. I'm making margin. I'm helping the client get what they want. I'm also doing some of the work, obviously, still, because I can do. I have an understanding of what's needed. And then it just really just started to snowball. And that's how it really started.
Now you're the founder of Nuom. What's your favorite aspect of being a business owner?
It's the flexibility. I can just, before this call, I just been to the gym for an hour and a half. I work this morning. I can work whenever I want. And then I know other people can work whenever they want as well, but I really can't, because I don't really report to anybody apart from the client. So I work this morning from 5 till 8. I did a 3-hour shift there, then go to the gym, drop the kids off school, go to the gym. I do like the flexibility, the freedom. I love the team that I have. That wasn't always the case, but now I have an amazing team, and we're doing some really, really cool stuff. I would say this is my sixth team. I've gone up. Okay, we've hit the ceiling, gone down, or flatlined, then gone up again. It's been kind of like that. We had a big drop a couple of years ago. Big drop. Bad culture. I love learning as well. I love being. The great thing now is I have a great leadership team, a really good team. That when I'm wrong, they basically say you're wrong. Okay, tell me where I'm wrong. This is the reason why you're wrong. Okay, cool, that's fine. You lot are so much smarter than me. You know what my vision is. You know where I want to go. You know how to execute it. Just go and do it, basically. And if you need me, you need me. And it's a really cool place to be in now. It's taken a long, long time, but it's a really, really cool space to be.
You've said that this is your sixth team. Nuom was born 2009. These are some messages you sent in preparation of our chat that after 12 years in the industry, you struggled to break £1 million ARR. Something wasn't working. Then the pandemic hit and you decided to pivot away from the traditional digital agency. Talk to me about what that pivot was and why did you decide to do it?
So when we started out, I was a web developer. Magento was big at the time, ecom. So we just jumped on that. It was boring, it was hard. And then around 2011, someone asked us to do a mobile app, and I just saw opportunity. And I think that's another good thing about that I have is I can see opportunity. And we just doubled down on it. We just went like, this is, you can see it, right? Digital transformation in the health service in particular. We just doubled down on that. And that led to working with the NHS, working in pharmaceutical, and building products in that space. And that was cool. That worked really well. And we just like skyrocketed. But I don't come from a business background. And there's no one else in here for me to, at that time, to report to. So everything I was learning was on the fly. So we didn't make too many mistakes. The one mistake we did make is that we didn't double down when we were at the top. We didn't scale. We basically took it for granted and we got bored. We were like, oh, this is easy. This is making money. What else can we do? And in a way, I got arrogant. me in particular, because I thought, well, if I can do it in this space, I can set up a marketing agency, I can set up a PR agency. This is easy, and we can have this big super group of agencies, right? This ridiculous, like you look back at it now and you're like, what an idiot. Because there was no process, there was no infrastructure. Everybody was a yes person, yes, Martin, we can do that. Yes, no one was questioning. Or I had a really young team. The team that I another thing that I hadn't, which I'd done, was hire cheap in a way, and then kind of expected them to figure it out like I did. Not everybody's the same. Some people just need to be guided and have real mentorship and leadership. Whereas my expectations of people was to kind of go, right, okay, well, you come out of university, you're a smart kid, you've been doing this for a while, let's go and build this out, basically. And we went like that, and then we just hit a wall. Another thing was the stuff that we were building didn't look great, and so that's the time when UX started coming in. About 2014, 2015, everyone started looking at user experience, customer experience. Especially in the pharma space, all the products look like something out of Windows 95. They didn't really look good, and that space is really important for people to engage, because they were using a paper-based system. Now they're using their mobile app, and they're using this thing that looks like Windows 95, when on the other side they're using Facebook, they're using Twitter, or whatever the app, the big thing at that time, stuff that's engaging, and people just weren't engaging, and they had to engage because they needed to improve their health and wellness. So I invested, once again, another opportunity. We then doubled down on terms of UX. So we hired a UX team, basically. And then we grew again. And one of the big changes was around 2015, when I had we had our first child. When you have kids, it changes you, because you just don't have time. You don't have time for anything. Where when you're younger, you can work those long hours. You can, if you need to take the morning off, you can catch it up in the evening or stuff like that. It doesn't work like that. And I think that was, me personally, that was a big shock to the system, because it just took out time. So I love my kids to bits, but in terms of where we were trajectory wise, I didn't have anyone in the business that could take up the responsibility, or I didn't have a team. It was still me, because I was still learning. I didn't realize that to get that leadership team, to get people in the business, you need to pay the money. There's no way around it. You need to, if you want good people, you have to pay. That's the one thing that I've learned, is that don't skimp on those key senior positions, and treat them really well, and make sure they're looked after, because they will come back. It will come back and reward you massively.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're a very intelligent person yourself. It takes a lot, and not many are willing to be vulnerable. And you were, in the last 3 or 4 minutes, when you talked about a lot of the roadblocks or bumps in the road that you came to. But I'm sure that you still come up again. Go on.
It's easy to talk about that now, because one of the things, I've been working in the wellness space for a while, so it's good to talk about that kind of stuff now, because it helps you. You need to improve, and you need to sort of level up and go. You need to learn from your mistakes, and that's the one thing. I don't know whether it's an age thing. As I've got older, I've been more mature. As you've got children, obviously you get a bit more mature. I think the pandemic definitely helped. It gave me something that I haven't had in years, which was time. The world basically stood still for quite a while. And for the first time, I was like, this isn't too bad, actually. We've okay, yeah, there's shit going on in the world, but actually, this is giving me time to think about what I want to do, lifestyle versus, selling the business, for example, that sort of thing that you think about as well. So yeah, it's been, I don't mind sharing that kind of stuff. I think it's good, it's clever, and hopefully it helps somebody as well, because there's a lot of people who are going on the same journey.
Respect. You said selling. You said the word selling, and you moved on. But a thing that you brought up to me in a prior conversation was around why raising funds is not a good metric for startup success. Why do you believe that?
You always hear about it in the news, don't you? This company's raised, their Series A or their Series C. I was speaking to one of my friends works at a company, and they raised another round of funding. And the reason they raised another round of funding is because they wasted the previous round. It's not a great metric, really. I'm very old school. In the old days, you'd set up a business, you generate some money, you'd invest it back in the business, and you grow it, right?
Bootstrap.
And I get it. Yeah, I get it that if you've got something and a product, especially in the startup space, then the only way to basically generate, you've got something that's working, you want to double down on it and you want to scale it, right? So you need the money. 100% you can get, it makes sense to get that money, right? In terms of getting the right people in and sort of hiring those people. But there's something you don't hear about, and it just kind of frustrates me. You don't hear about the businesses that, like Lemless, for example, right? They've got this product and they haven't got any investment, but they're generating revenue, 2 million annual to recurring revenue. You don't kind of hear about them. You just hear about this new startup, which 40% of, like 90% of them fell in the first year, right? It's probably going to be less than that now. Yeah, a lot fell in the first year. Only 40% of them actually build a product. That's ridiculous,
Wow.
And then 4% only make revenue, right? They're the stats. A good business is a business that generates revenue, reinvests it, employs people.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that statement. Challenging yourself, something a lot of people do. But 10 minutes ago in this conversation, you talked about one of your favorite parts of owning the business is that you have some sort of freedom where you can do what you want when you want, to a degree. You said you went to the gym this morning, and I noticed on Instagram you've posted about this 105-mile rat race that you're doing in September. Why did you decide to do it, and what is it? It sounds insane. Difficult, insane. Yes.
So I like going to the gym, but I like lifting weights. I don't really like conditioning or cardio work, which this is. But it's for a great cause. It's for my friend Jason Walls. His son's got Duchenne syndrome. It's he's wheelchair bound at the moment. He's just come out of an operation where he's had his spine realigned, so it's a bit more straight, to improve his quality of life. We want to raise money because obviously the pandemic, a lot of money's been pulled for support. We want to raise money to help him do some bucket list stuff, really. So, if he wants to go to, he's an Arsenal fan. I mean, it doesn't sound exciting going to the Arsenal, but
can you forgive him for that?
Yeah. If he wants to, go down to, he goes down to the Arsenal anyway, but if he wants to go to do something else, or he wants to go to, Disneyland or wherever it is that he wants to do, right? We want to raise enough money so he can spend that on himself. So a bunch of lads, we've all known each other 20, God, a long time, 20, 25 years. And it's you could do it over 2 days, which we probably should have done, but we decided to do it over 1 day. So it's a 7-mile run, followed by 80-mile bike ride, followed by a 30-mile run, followed by a 1-mile kayak, and that's 105 miles. And it's 10,000 feet elevation from one end of Scotland to the other. It scares me thinking about it now. But training wise, I'm at the end of the day, we'll do it. We'll do it because, we mentally we'll get through it and we'll do it. And physically we'll probably, hopefully be in the best shape we've ever been in, or as we can do as we hit 40. But I think it's good in terms of it. It's a challenge, right? You want to challenge yourself as well. We could have done it, like I said, we could have done it in 2 days, but if you asked me that then, can you do it in 2 days? I can do it in 2 days. Can you do it 1 day? I don't know if I can. So why don't we give it a go?
There's challenges you come up against in business as well. If we focus on the last 18 to 24 months, are there any challenges or objections that you came up against that you didn't necessarily expect or account for? And if so, how did you tackle it?
The easiest one is a pandemic, isn't it? But it's weird because obviously I didn't foresee the COVID crisis, but I did I did plan for a risk, basically, in terms of 80% of your business goes overnight. I had a plan. So when it happened, I had a plan. I had literally dug out, that's my plan. This is what I would do if that happens. Luckily, the government schemes, the furlough schemes kind of helped me, give me the time, like I talked about earlier, and kind of kick the can down the road in terms of making decisions. I think one of the previous to that, it was really hard to build a culture. Like I said, I think we had a really bad toxic culture 2 years ago, and that was just because bad hires. There wasn't clear in terms of the vision, what we wanted to do. It was loose. We also had really bad clients. We took on work that looked amazing in terms of the numbers, but the clients were just horrendous, which really obviously affected the team. We became a bit of a sort of place where people would come in and leave, so the retention of staff was difficult as well. There's a lot of stuff. About 2 years ago, we're a completely different business now, and that's one area where I've learned loads. Like I said, I've learned as we've gone along, but during the pre-pandemic we rebranded because I felt the name, which we were known as Roller Agency, it felt toxic to me as an owner. I became very disconnected from the business because it wasn't what I set out at the beginning. It hadn't become fun, so I needed to realign. So that was one of the big things that I had to do, I think, in the last 2 years, was realign my personal values with the business values, because it changed. When I started it, I was 24, and I'm 37 then when I did that, and I was a completely different person. And when I realigned that, it really, really helped. And we did that in a brand sprint. And that's one of the big things I think that changed, is that I realized that you could do stuff in 5 days, which would usually take 3 to 4 months, and there would be loads of people, going back and forth, and things wouldn't get signed off, and things would take so longer. And we basically rebranded in 5 days. And I was like, well, if we can rebrand it in 5 days, why can't we push a client design project out in 5 days, and why can't we do this why is it taking us 5 months when we can do stuff in 5 days? And that was a big eye opener, because at that point I realized that we needed to change as a business, because we were taking too long on stuff. And I started to look into the design sprint in terms of what Google were using. And I started to look into the lean methodology, and I realized that as a business, we were doing stuff agile. Saying we were doing stuff agile, we were doing it wagile, because we say we did it agile, but we kind of fitted it to what the client still wanted. The client would go, yeah, you can work agile, but it's got to be ready by this day. Okay, yeah, that's fine, we can do that. So once again, I looked into how we as a business needed to operate, how we could be more efficient. And yeah, we just then started to change. And that's when we realized a lot of the stuff that was fun that we were working on was with early stage startups, not with these large corporates, because things just took too long to do. And that's when we rebranded and started to look in terms of, right, okay, well, we need to look at our messaging. We need to look at the type of clients we want to work with. And then, we gradually started to change that. But the big thing I had then, I was on my 5th team then, is that team just wasn't right for what I wanted to do. And that's when the pandemic happened. And a lot of them had started to leave beforehand, because they wanted to work with the big brands, because, it's good on the CV, right? We work with this brand and that brand. I didn't want to, because, they were just a pain in the backside, basically. I wanted to work with people that were building new stuff, disruptive. Yeah, it's not going to be as big a contract as the other one. And at some point, they're not going to need us, which is fine, because once we build it, they can hire their team and they can scale it out. But at least while we're doing it, it's fun, and we still make money. At the end of the day, we're not going to be huge, but we still make money, and it's fun to do. So I think the big change was doing that design sprint and brand sprint, and looking at what we could become. And we've been on a journey since then. I mean, what was that, 18 months ago now, 2 years almost, to where we are now. So our team from then, it's completely changed. I think there's like 2 people left from that original team now. So people have left, and we basically went, okay, you guys are leaving, but we then upgraded each person as they've left, basically. So yeah, it's been good.
At some point in this podcast, I mentioned that you went to university to study multimedia computing. I'm assuming that you continue to invest in yourself. Are there any podcasts you listen to, books you read, or YouTube channels you're subscribed to that you listen to or watch or read from?
Yes, I've been doing that a lot last couple of years, more recently. Before, I wish I'd started doing that years ago. It is one of the regrets not reading a lot more. I listen to a lot of marketing stuff, Russell Brunson, traffic secrets. I listen to some other different types of podcasts as well. I think in terms of reading, I read a lot of once again sales and marketing books at the moment, and I read a lot of the lean methodology books, lean startup process, and then I think where I get most of my knowledge from is my staff, which is, it's easy because they're, my head of engineering or Rob, the head of design, they're the ones that basically send me stuff over, so I end up looking at clips, or listening to stuff that they send me, or they just talk to me about stuff that they do. So I get a lot of my information from those guys. I guess at the moment my role is very sales and marketing focused, and building that sort of business. I've started looking into, I can't remember the name of it now. I think it's EOS. I do need to read more. I guess that's one of the things. I think it's interesting because I sit down and read a book, right? But I kind of not skim read, but I read quite fast. Basically, I can take a lot of information in quite quickly. But I could do with more reading. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Fair enough. It's actually, if you ask people their goals for the year, almost everyone's goal, they write down to read more every single year. So you're not alone in that. I don't know how many people achieve it, but you're not alone in wanting to read more. Two final questions for you. Question number one is, I know you live in Nottingham. I think you've got 2 kids and a wife. I don't know if you have a dog as well. Pretend all of them, your loved ones, are safe, but your house is burning down and you can only save one item. What one item would that be?
That's a good question. What would that be? That's a really good question. Probably my phone. I need my phone, right?
Yeah.
I need my phone. If everything else, I can, I was going to say my Liverpool kit, but that's going to be really my Kenny Dalglish kit. But that's going to be like, I would say my Kenny Dalglish kit actually. My number 7 classic retro Kenny Dalglish kit.
Fair. You must be happy they got into the Champions League at the end of the season this year.
Yeah,
just scraped it at the end. Nice. I'd like you to imagine it's the end of the decade, so it's pretend it's now 2030, and you're looking back on the last 9 to 10 years. You can answer this personally, professionally, combination of both. What would you like to be looking back on if you're imagining now is 2020?
So what, we're looking 10 years into the future?
We're pretending that we're talking at the year 2030, and we're looking back on the last 10 years. What would you like to be looking back on?
I'd be like to look at, I think, stability and growth. I think, like, at the moment, for the last 10 years, it's been like that, a roller coaster. I'd like to have a business where my plan at the moment is, I actually have that, by the end of the decade. So most people said, like, build your business, sell it after 5 years, and it'd be like that, right? I don't want it like that. I want a very gradual growth. If that means that we have to say no, we'll say no. But I want a really gradual growth, that where I can then exit in 10 years or the end of the decade. And I want a business where the people that are here at the moment, they're still here, they're part of the leadership team, and that they can take the business forward, and they can have it as their own ownership and they can take it forward. I think health obviously is very important. Like I said, I'm a big believer in health and wellness, physical well-being, mental well-being. I think equals really strong professional wellness as well. It helps you in terms of your productivity. But I think stability, I think it's the big one. I just don't want, last 10 years it was exciting, right? You're like, yeah, it's really, really great. And then it's like, fuck, this is not working. And then you're going like that. I think I need to take what I've learned of the last 10 years, apply it now, and just have that gradual growth. And I don't really want to go for funding. I want to build a business which is generating revenue and it's growing off its own back. And I don't really want to take funding because I don't want to. Sometimes when you bring people in, well, most of the time, if you bring people in and they, like a VC or a company or an investor, they want to, you lose a part of ownership and you lose a part of that
They want a return on their
freedom.
investment pretty fast.
Yeah, they do. And you also lose, and you change as a business. I've seen it with businesses that have had investment, they change and people just leave, and I don't want that, especially not this time in life. I don't want that. Maybe when I was younger, that would have been cool because it would have been exciting. But now I just, like I said, stability. It's the one thing I keep going on about: stability.
Well, I've had a great pleasure in getting to know you a little more over the last 40 minutes. I wish you nothing but the best in the future. And maybe in 2030, you'll be celebrating your ninth annual 105-mile rat race. Who knows?
This is definitely going to be the last one I do.
Well, look, from my end, it's been a pleasure to getting to know you a little more, and thank you for being my guest today.
No worries. Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Cheers, Martin.